Xenoblade Chronicles is a series predicated on screwing with you. Understanding what you think and what to expect is the job of Xenoblade Chronicles, and it throws all of that out the window to keep you on your toes, guessing, not knowing what to expect or where this story is going. Xenoblade Chronicles, and the reason this story is so special, is because it understands how to keep the player on their toes, keep them guessing, while not just doing scenes like this for the sake of keeping the player surprised, but to further the narrative themes to make sense with the story that is going on and to fit like a glove. Life is unpredictable, and so is Xenoblade's narrative. It's willing to seem predictable at times and then pull the rug from under you, or let those predictions come to fruition. It makes it so you can never tell if something seems predictable or if you are being baited. Chapter 2 of Xenoblade Chronicles is the perfect encapsulation of this principle. It is the bedrock upon which the story and characters of Xenoblade Chronicles are built upon. It is within this chapter that the tone and theme of the game is set. Let's get into it. The saga of Xenoblade continues, with the death of FIORAAAA and the Mechon invasion of Colony 9. Chapter 1 left off with Shulk, Rein, and FIORAAAA getting the ether cylinders, and then the Mechon began their invasion and thoroughly windmill dunking on Colony 9. And what this scene helps elicit is the feeling of helplessness. Colony 9 was a home and a place inextricably linked with its defense. Its AA turrets and military were in the forefront of all the visuals and storytelling for this location up to this point, and it gets systemically ripped apart by the Mechon, and the faced Mechon seemingly heading the charge. So immediately, the Mechon are viewed as a credible threat to our survival. We realize just how much the harms rely on the Monado, and we now have a single enemy to look at and point and say villain, with the faced Mechon going full Wolverine on everyone. Dunban's AWOL and seemingly has rushed to the lab to collect the Monado despite his injuries, so our party tries and cut a path towards the lab after Dunban. FIORAAAA gets separated, Dunban comes in with the Monado, and combined, we lay a smackdown on some robots, and we are starting to feel good about ourselves, yeah? We're fighting the back, we're doing a pretty good job for ourselves, yeah? Like Patrick and SpongeBob in the middle of burning down Bikini Bottom, we saved the city, but Dunban becomes incapable of wielding the Monado. It's just too much for him anymore. And Shulk understands what he must do. He picks it up in a last desperate plea. Very, very, very typical anime sword storyline here. And that's the point. Shulk takes up the Monado, gets foresight, and with the Monado's natural ability to cut through Mechon like a block of cheese, he is able to hold off the Mechon. Seemingly the only person capable of wielding the Monado, now that Dunban has been rejected by it after the toll it has taken on his body. And yeah, the Monado is an important part of the story. It's central to a lot of the actual events, but funnily enough, Shulk taking up the Monado isn't the most important part of this chapter, whereas in a lot of other stories it would be, because the focus would be on the hero and their new anime sword that can save the day, but instead, they go for a more character-driven experience here. We immediately pivot to the faced Mechon coming in, the Monado being ineffective against it, and then FIORAAAA trying to save the day with a random mech she found, which was a pretty badass scene all things considered. But the faced Mechon then proceeds to hole punch FIORAAAA and leave her as Mechon Chow. Shulk saw this with foresight. He tried to prevent it, but then summarily failed. And this is the important part of this chapter. And honestly, arguably the most important scene in all of Xenoblade, because this sets the tone. This isn't your generic run-of-the-mill RPG story. This is unique, it has its own story, and wants to regale you with its unique interpretations. This is the scene that, in my opinion, gives Xenoblade Chronicles its identity. Shulk, who you would assume is a goody two-shoes protagonist, suffers a loss immediately, and even with his magic sword is incapable of changing fate, and he gives in to hate and anger. They even play off of this, with his conversation with Rein afterwards, where Rein admits he thought he would have to convince Shulk to go after the Mechon with him, to give in to anger, but no convincing is required. Shulk has already gone down that path into hate and vengeance. And this is when you discover something. This isn't a story about survival. This is a revenge story. Not a story about just saving humanity and defeating the bad guy. It's a story of anger, human emotion, and revenge. We are going full Liam Neeson. We have a particular set of skills with a particular tool, and we're going to use that tool to wedge it in the eye of the Mechon and twist it. This is a story about hate, anger, and the evolution of human grief and emotion. This is a story of Shulk and Rhine, who lost someone they cared about, and Shulk, who takes up a sword that lets him peek ahead and possibly change the future. Not necessarily for the betterment of humanity, but for his own selfish interest to avenge Fiora's death. This is the set piece, the cornerstone upon which this story is constructed. Shulk willingly gives in to anger. The game for its entirety up to this point lulls you into this false sense of security, gives you the traditional RPG party setup, the average build, plain looking protagonist, the childhood friend and or love interest, as well as the protag's best friend who happens to be a muscle-headed idiot, with maybe a heart of gold, as they set off an adventure to save humanity using the same magic sword that a lot of other stories and games tell. That's the setup, and then the game sucker punches you, with the apparent killing of Fiora, throws salt in the wound, with letting Shulk see it happen before it transpires, and then being incapable of stopping it from happening. And then he willingly, by himself, gives in to anger, and he and Rhine set out on a journey of revenge. And unlike a lot of other stories that would go very grim-dark with this twist, where they would be in the middle of a burning city, or knelt over the corpse of their friend, no, it's a sunny day at the same park where Fiora gave Shulk a sandwich earlier, where they have a lot of memories, a lot of happy memories. It's a sunny day, there are still survivors, Colony 9 is still there, but they give in to anger. Anybody can write a scene like this. That's not what makes it special. The way the story goes from here, though, the way it's built upon, the themes and messages, how Shulk continues to give in to anger, the way they don't write their characters as one-dimensional archetypes, the follow-up to this scene is what makes it special in my opinion. They knock you off your toes, put you on the back foot, but then with proper and delicate follow-up and storylines, they play off of the seeds that this scene plants to make the events later on feel more earned, warranted, and deserving. Shulk's storyline, from here to sparing Mumcar later on, at Sword Valley, works because of this scene. Egil only works as a villain because of this scene with Shulk, because Shulk starts to walk down the same path as Egil did all those years ago, by himself. And this is something I will talk about when we get there, when we get to Prison Island. Shulk stays on this path, and if Fiora had died permanently, he would not have gotten off of it. He doesn't get off this path by himself. That doesn't happen. And that's something a lot of people miss out on when they characterize Shulk as a character. And this will be I've talked about this before. This will be something that becomes intrinsically linked to Xenoblade protagonists, where if the protagonist was left by themselves, they would have walked down the same or similar path as the antagonist, or the antagonistic foil in the game. They can't do it themselves. This is true for Shulk, Rex, and Noah. They all require outside influence to get them off that path, with Shulk on Prison Island, Rex and Tantal, and Noah in Chapter 5 and 6, with the Eclipse. They all require outside influence to get them to go off that path. Noah to a lesser degree, but it's still there. We'll get to that when we get to Xenoblade 3 in like 5 years. This is a story of thematic and storytelling parallels, and they establish this perspective so they can flip it on its head later on. Xenoblade Chronicles works because of this scene. That is how important it is, how critical it is to the plot as a whole. Because this is the formula for Xenoblade 1. They will make you think they're going one way and then sucker punch you and go another. They will do this time and time and time again. And they will even show you what's going to happen. But because it can go both ways, you don't know if that vision's going to come to pass or not. Here with Fiora, the vision he had of Metal Face killing Fiora came to pass. It happened. As we'll see later on, though, that with Zord, doesn't necessarily have to come to pass. He can change the future, and a lot of the emotional gravity that will be invested in this game later on will be predicated on the idea and question, in each scene, can Shulk change the future? You get a spoiler. Can he change it? Or will he continue to walk down the path of destiny? And all those questions that this game sets up for you, and the reason Xenoblade 1 is unpredictable is because of this scene. It all comes back to here. because of the storytelling principles and mechanisms they invoke to make this scene work. Because it is here where Xenoblade distances itself from a generic RPG storyline and starts to feel unique and take a form all of its own. That is what this scene does, and that's why it's so important overall. And why I would also argue this is probably the most important scene in all of Xenoblade. Because storytelling mechanics-wise, they utilize this principle in all the other Xenoblade games as well. This becomes a mainstay of a Xenoblade storytelling experience. And I will call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload and stream in the future. Next week, we cover the storyline of Shala in Colony 6, as well as our first minor antagonist, Zord. Tune in, it's gonna be a good one. Also, I guess Juju's in it, so yeah, you know what? Maybe we just skip to the next chapter. I'm joking. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody, until we meet again.